Hey, so I am under direct assignment to post. By who can't say, but that is a topic for another day. But I'm under direct assignment to post because it's what needs to be done. Firstly, like my some of my platforms are never coming back, and I just have to accept that. Um, just a brief little history. Every time I did something, it went viral, and then shortly thereafter, it was sabotaged. I used to be a blogger. I blogged on a platform, and the blogs went viral. And, mostly I talked about boxing, but I started talking about a lot of things that started to get just as viral as the boxing blogs and talked about world issues. And, soon as I started doing that, not long after, one day it was sabotaged and booted off the site. Um, I didn't get an explanation why. I didn't know what happened, and at the time, I was a little naive. I just couldn't figure it out. Started doing YouTube, and same thing. Jumped on some things. Started talking about boxing. Boxing things went viral, and then started talking about other things. Cosby. Started talking about world issues from a perspective that was not seen in the mainstream, and then shortly thereafter, sabotaged, shadow banned, the virility of my content ceased. And, it was because, hey, and now trying to come back, I wanted to wait until my blog site was cleaned, drewstorynews.com. And every time I get it cleaned, a week or two later, it's down again. You can't, you can't click on it. Malware, spyware, all this stuff. And, I've come to terms with the fact they're never going to let it be un, you know, hindered with this kind of stuff. They're just always going to do it. There's certain targeted people. I'm not that. I feel bad for targeted people. Certain people have spirit guides and protection that people are not going to mess with me, or people who have protection. But there's a lot of people who are blocked, you know, although they can't do anything to me, they could try to keep certain people out of the mainstream. And that's what this video is going to be about, using discernment. And I'm going to give you some examples. Stop thinking that these people who are popular in the mainstream are going to ever give you the truth, because I'm telling you, they are not. The people who are going to tell you the truth are people you've never seen or heard. So, like, because they're not going to be left alone. Most of the people who are hugely popular are people who are either positioned or people who are compromised because they're working with, covert groups, or they're platformed and funded by someone, or they're people that they don't give a ish about. They don't care if you watch this clown enough. He or she is not telling you anything that they care about. So those are the types of people who are hugely popular today. People who are compromised, platformed, or, you know, compromised in the way that they're playing the game, they're playing ball with a certain collective of people who want them to say certain things. Um, so like the Hodge twins, like who the hell are they? Like did like low intellect, but they are saying things, horrendous things, and you got to wonder, like, where did these guys come? Like, everyone that is popular, like very popular, not everyone. A lot of people who are very popular, they're not gonna give you the truth. And I'm gonna give you examples. People who are gonna give you the truth, you're gonna see the world change. A lot of people are fixated on, how many followers you got, how many viral things that you got. Watch, it's not gonna matter anymore. There's gonna be a different litmus test as to what truth is and where you're getting it from and what channels you subscribe to and what you're watching. That game is gonna change. That pendulum is gonna swing in a different direction, because that's not gonna matter so much anymore. The mainstream, the podcasts, that's the new mainstream media. That is the new mainstream media. They lost control of the narrative. And so nobody's watching the news. They know that. No one's watching the mainstream media news anymore. And so people, independent media, regular people started to become popular sharing information. So they took that over too. They t they run all these channels. You're not gonna get the truth. Now, for example, say, let's talk about Joe Rogan and what he did recently that people were talking about, which was horrendous. There was a girl, a black woman who worked at Equinox, and she was excellent at her job, so much so that they promoted her, and she was over a lot of other employees. And what happened? Because she was a woman and because she was a black woman, there were people who were jealous and fragile, weak, and they were targeting her and saying inappropriate things, racially harassing her and harassing her as a black woman, saying, derogatory things. And she complained about it. And she filed, I'm not sure what she did, but she documented the treatment. And the power-ups did nothing. They ignored everything she said, and instead, they flipped it on her and figured, "Hey, okay, we're gonna fire you. We need a reason, because that's what happens when you try to make change. Corporations are evil, first of all. Like, people just don't understand that. One of the biggest problems we have right now is corporatization. I mean, corporatism. Corporate entities are evil. They're evil. We, working for them, bring them to heal, to serve our communities and, give us livelihood. But left to their own devices, they're evil. And people need to understand that. The, the corporate mindset is not wired right. So what did they do? They targeted her and said they ignored the people she said that were harassing her and saying racist comments. And, she was supposed to grin and take it. So they said, oh, well, we're going to fire her. They picked a reason and zoned in on her lateness. That was a big mistake because it proved her case. She filed a lawsuit against them for racism, sexism, and discrimination. And they proved it by firing her for her lateness. You know why? Because it exposed them. Because she proved that it was pure retaliation for trying to right wrongs and say, hey, I am being harassed here. I'm being told very inappropriate things and I don't have to sit here and take it. So they retaliated against her and fired her for being late 47 times. But the problem with that is that there was so many employees late way worse than that. So she proved, yes, because I am a black woman, you targeted me. When this one and this one, they were late too, just as much and a lot of times way more than her. So it proved her case. The court agreed with her and sided with her and awarded her $11 million. That's what happened. How did Joe Rogan tell it? See, Joe Rogan is surrounded by, these conservative white supremacist racists who are feeding him information just like Trump, and they're wrong. And Joe Rogan's not a bad guy. He's not overtly racist. He's got a huge platform, one of the biggest platforms on the planet right now, and the people surrounding him and feeding him information are doing so by design. That's why he's always misinformed. You're not going to get truth from a channel that big. It's just not going to happen. Not today, not tomorrow. The truth is going to be on the outskirts. And this is not an attack on Joe Rogan. I actually kind of like the guy. This is just calling a spade a spade. Joe Rogan misinformed his millions of followers because he fed them a false narrative. And in the end, the false narrative came from his handlers and people surrounding him, pushing political talking points that they wanted. And they did that by chopping out all the crucial information that would let you understand what really happened so that it fed their narrative. It's a lie. And the reason why they do that, because the people above all these people, the powers that be, want us all to be stupid, racist, distracted, fearful, and always fighting and warring amongst each other, so that you never have it in your mind to start galvanizing and start fighting them. That is what we're living in. There's certain deceptions that are going to be mixed in on most of your popular channels, and you just got to use discernment and understand that. And corporatization, and corporatism is the problem, and the two-party system is the problem. And they find a way to get their talking points into huge people, both camps, and they work together, you know. And on the left, you got to worry about their agendas. They push a lot of feminist talking points that honestly we don't need. You could fight me. LGBTQ plus issues, not against them, but they're with the pronoun and all that stuff. That has nothing to do with anything that we actually need in society. They push a lot of things that are not good. That's their shtick. They're full of agendas and propaganda. But on the right, they have their agendas and they're demonizing, DEI, and they have a very genius way of making racism cool again. That's what they have achieved. And they trick the common man, the well-intentioned common man, to think like the soulless, psychotic psychopaths. They're satanic. Their nature is satanic. And the people that run these corporate entities, these political parties, they're psychopaths. And they figure out a way to achieve things. And they've achieved making things that used to be good things that humans would, you know, be, lionized for believing in, like diversity and inclusion. Well, they've now made it a bad thing. We don't want any of that diversity. Like, the psychotic psychopaths have tricked the common man to think like they do. And the two parties work together because on the left, you have the extreme, the extreme, and they go too far and do too much. And then on the right, you have the other extreme. Let's get rid of it all. We don't need diversity. We don't need it. And so there's no balance. There's no truth. And so you're not going to get any truth from these people. You're not. And what Joe Rogan did was, lie. He didn't tell the truth because he didn't know any better to not understand the game that's being played and make everything DEI so that these corporations get away with whatever they want. They were wrong. And, when you're a little person like this black woman, with with a justifiable grievance, and their inaction, before their inaction was exposed, they tried to like hush her up, fire the black lady, and get her out of there. No, and the courts awarded her. This is what's going to happen to a lot of, DEI being eliminated. There's going to be lawsuits. I predicted that, I think, a couple of years ago. That's just going to come back. That's why there's DEI, because of lawsuits. But the common man just doesn't have it. We're going to go backwards. So this is an ingenious way that they've made diversity and inclusion bad and called everything woke. And, the common man that just doesn't know how they're being played is getting played. So Joe Rogan spoke from that mindset of these people who are trying to demonize everything as woke and, oh, there's black privilege and all this nonsense. And that's what you got. I tried for years to explain to people how these soulless psychotic psychopaths, these satanic pigs, how they operate. And I've used many examples. I remember in a few videos, I used the example of the old lady that got burned by McDonald's coffee. That happened many years ago. I don't know if it was 20 years ago. Um, I don't remember at this point, but I don't know if people remember that story. There was a lady that got burned by McDonald's coffee, and everybody was and she won a lot of money from a settlement from McDonald's, and everybody was cracking jokes on this lady. They were making songs, people doing skits, making fun of her. George Bush then, after the hype, signed the Frivolous Lawsuit Act to protect corporate America because the average man is an idiot and did not know what happened. And what really happened? Well, everybody was making fun of this poor old lady. There was an old lady who was in a McDonald's drive-through, I think with her relative, and what the public did not know, was that McDonald's had several instances and complaints, people complaining about the heat of the temperature of their coffee. They were told many, many times the coffee is too hot, and they didn't do anything about it. They didn't do anything, and I think a couple of things did happen, and they never did anything. They just ignored the people complaining about it. That's negligence. So, what eventually happened was, they have a whole, bunch of complaints about the coffee being too hot, and when it got into her lap, it spilled over, and the burns was so bad and excruciating that her skin came off. The burns were so bad, and she was hospitalized, and she didn't want money. She just and her family contacted McDonald's for bare minimum to maybe cover the cost of her hospitalization. She wasn't going after them, but they did something egregious. McDonald's knew that their coffee was abnormally hot. They knew the 79-year-old lady was hospitalized and had to get her skin grafted. And they tried to shut her up and send her away with a couple $100, like $800 in McDonald's coupons. And a couple $100 to McDonald's, a multi-billion dollar company, was a disgrace. And so they took it to court. And because McDonald's was so negligent and so disgusting, I am telling you, corporate entities are satanic. It's not a bombastic statement. It's not an outrageous statement. Corporate entities, if you leave them to their own devices and you don't push the human element into the equation, they are satanic. And so because McDonald's was so gross and handled the situation so disastrously, she was awarded money. That's the real story. So just like this Joe Rogan, here we go again. And they do it all the time. And people don't realize that people are living in a fantasy land. They don't realize that the average person is walking around without a mind. And the minds of the masses are always controlled with false narratives and false information. And that's why channels like mine come out trying to tell everybody this, and we get swatted down. You know, such is life. But Joe Rogan's the most popular podcast. It is what it is. Anyway, when you're talking about serious controversial things, especially involving race, they don't know what they're talking about. Matt Walsh, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, these guys are incapable of light and truth. They don't know what they're saying when it comes to race. Um, I'm sure they'll be right about other stuff, but no. And it's not just Joe Rogan, it's every channel. So now let's talk about the anti-black agenda. There's obvious an anti-black agenda in media, in Hollywood, in film. There's just this anti-blackness that is normalized, and it's just okay to dump on black people. Where does that come from? It's because the satanic, soulless, psychotic psychopaths. This is their agenda, one of their many agendas. And there's a hidden reason, maybe in future videos, while I'll explain why, what black people, what they represent to to them, and why there's this fixated attack, nonstop attack on black people and blackness. We're going to talk about that in many videos to come. That is part of my assignment. And you're going to see that in a lot of people who make it big in media and in independent media, there's an anti-blackness coming from either red team or blue team. But the anti-blackness comes in different, it comes at you in a different way. The left and the blue team, it's a little bit, it's more sneaky and veiled. And it's more about, in a long-term agenda, anti-black agenda that is not easily seen, but it's there. Joe Biden basically said, "You ain't black if you're gonna vote for me." And there's slips like, how they view black people and what you are supposed to do because we own you isms. Another modus operandi of the left is to make black people feel as though they have representation and people on the inside fighting for black issues when they will do little to nothing. Every now and then they do some things, but they don't really do much. And what they do is include all these other groups and push them in front of black issues and concerns. They like immigrants, feminism, LGBTQ plus issues, all go in front of black people. Hence the term woke, because the right has an easy job swatting it all down by constantly grouping legitimate black concerns with fluff and all this other stuff that we really don't need. And black concerns get swatted down. That's a great teamwork from the left and the right. And it's by design. And another thing that they do to make black people feel as though they have representation of people fighting for them they don't really do much, but through optics. So the optics of inclusion and diversity is more so on the left side. But it's really controlled opposition. They will not do much. And it's to make black people not galvanize themselves and fight for their own issues the way many other communities do, like the Jewish community. They don't want blacks to do smart things like that. They want blacks to dissolve themselves into the blue team and stay brainwashed and programmed and do nothing. And why they hate Candace Owens, because she spit that out. She was actually correct about that. That's how the left rolls. And that's why there's kind of a civil war, because there's black people who are waking up to this and they're realizing this and they're starting to demand things for their vote. And then, there's black people who are still programmed and they'll never wake up. They will vote blue until death. And on the red team, they do things differently. But there's an anti-black agenda always coming at us nonstop. And there's a reason for that. The psychotic psychopaths. That's why you have, morons like the Hodge twins just doing it blatantly. You can't do that to anybody. Can't do that to the Jews. Can't do that to LGBTQ plus people. Just have a platform where you just dump on these people. That's disgusting. That is like, and who wants to watch that? Well, that's going to lead into my next point. When you're spiritually imbalanced and you're operating in a lower frequency, you're going to pay for that karma. You're attracting low vibe things. You're entertained by low vibe people, and you're going to be in a downward spiral of negative, low energy frequency behaviors. And, you're putting in this filth in your mind and laughing at idiots. It's going to affect you. So choice is yours, who you want to listen to and what you want to be entertained by. Or do you want to live to a higher, standard? Choice is entirely yours. Candace Owens, she says correct things all the time. But she's also the person that said that the most oppressed people on the planet are the police. When she said that, it's like that is so horribly wrong that no one took her to task. They are the most protected group. They're a branch of the government, and protected they can kill and get away with it. Like when she said that, it was just shockingly like, what? And her behavior regarding George Floyd was despicable. Um, and what a lot of conservatives say about George Floyd, and even Elon Musk jumped in on that. There's something wrong with these people. There's something wrong with them. It doesn't matter what the hell he did. And George Floyd, you gotta understand, the left and the right play games together. There's a reason why George Floyd was picked as the sounding board for Black Lives Matter, and not Tamir Rice or Elijah, the violinist that was not a criminal, didn't do anything wrong. They put a bag over his head and unalived him. It was horrendous. It was heart-wrenching. They didn't pick these you know, innocent blacks, young blacks, that like there would be nothing, there would be no counter argument. They picked George Floyd, this big, you know, like wasn't on, it was on drugs, or they picked him specifically. And not to speak ill of the dead, what the conservatives that jump on that issue, including Candace Owens, don't understand when they pretend to be Christian, is that it doesn't matter what he did. The point, if you're a human with a normal functioning brain, and evidently a lot of people don't have normal functioning brains, it doesn't matter. If it was a dog, you don't work for a branch of government and kneel on something's neck until it's unalived. So no, we never really needed those who are sound of mind and civilized, never really needed to see a toxicology report or a discussion of fentanyl, because our eyes didn't deceive us. We saw what we saw. And we all know, those of us who are, mentally and spiritually sound of mind, know that it isn't right for law enforcement or any human to kneel on another human being's neck for 10 minutes until he is unconscious and or unalived. We don't need to see anything else. There really is no other discussion. But you see the devilish trickery in words, and playing semantics to change the narrative. That is evil. And the minute we start divorcing ourselves from evil and start looking at things from a human perspective, from a one perspective, we are one perspective, and regardless of race, we will defeat the matrix and their tricks and schemes, because there is no division in that. We should all be on the same page. You should not, especially law enforcement, held to certain professional standards. No, you don't get to kneel on someone's neck. And then, when the person is unconscious or unalived, discuss let's demonize the guy that just is no longer with us. Let's bring up his rap sheet and talk, ill of the dead, and say, oh, he wasn't, you know, uh, he was no good anyway. Like he did this, and what, and what. I don't need to hear any of that. What he did, that's for the courts. People get so emotional and mindless that they don't know what they're doing 90% of the time. Like, it didn't matter what he did. He didn't get a trial yet. That's for the courts. So you hold your judgment and you let things happen the way they're supposed to happen. People are not supposed to be unalived in custody. We know that. So remove the nonsense and the idiotic banter back and forth. We don't have to do that, you know? And there is no other discussion. Like, he had a counterfeit $20 bill. Since when is that worth an unaliving? You know, so you're listening to these people. Ben Shapiro. Like something's like lacks a certain amount of empathy. He's a Zionist. You know, Candace Owens is a grifter and a coon. That's why she is where she is. That's why she's so huge right now. She did the devil's work to get where she is. and, more power to her. But those of us out here need to be careful what we ingest into our minds and in our hearts and into our thoughts. We know our higher selves know right from wrong, and we should align with it, with right, what's good, not figure out where we align racially and where we should know. We know what is right and what is not of light, and we should align with what is right. All of us, period. No platform is going to tell you this. But this is what we are here to experience, to overcome, this hatred. It's no secret to anyone that, Black people are the first people on the planet. Africa is the cradle of civilization. But what we're living in is an exploitation of that motherland and those people. You know that in Africa, like most of the world's like, the gold, the diamonds, the lithium, the minerals, all harvested and extracted from Africa, and Africans do not benefit from the profits. You know, that spirit of exploitation, colonization is something that we're all supposed to be experiencing. And the world, the universe wants to end this. And there's people like Elon Musk, the South African Canadian Nazi, speaking to us in our Oval Office, telling us, like, bringing us back to places that we've long since evolved out of, apartheid mindset, colonizing mindset. And he's making an argument for the white farmers in South Africa. You know, if for those who don't understand, where at South Africa was, where 10% of the white population owning and, you know, all the resources, all the wealth, all the, you know, for you to think that that's okay and that there's an argument of justification for that, I'm telling you with divine authority that there's something wrong with you. And anyone who's aligning with Elon Musk, including our president, there's something wrong with you spiritually if you're just not seeing this for what it is. And when there's an uprising and people are trying to fight injustice and you're standing with Elon Musk, the brain chip man, there's something wrong with you. The world is trying to change and evolve and get rid of this filth, this spirit of exploitation. And it goes from Africa into this country. The music, the sports, all the agents, the lawyers, they're not Black. But, harvesting the talent, harvesting the music, harvesting the minerals from the motherland. We're living in, if you have spiritual eyes, you'll see this matrix for what it is, the spirit of exploitation and not loving your humanity. We're being taught to hate everything Black, where we all came from. So it's self-hatred, it's hatred of yourself, and when you understand we are all fractals of God and we're all having an experience looking at the world from a different perspective. If you don't know what the truth is and you don't align yourself with the truth, you're lost. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter if you're Black. It doesn't matter what you are. We're all looking at the same thing from different angles and different perspectives. And if you don't align yourself with what is right, you are lost. You are lost. Stop willfully doing what is wrong, thinking what is wrong, watching what is wrong, watching what is, lowering your energy. Everything is energy, frequency, vibration. And the things that you take in all is mind, the things that you take in and you choose to believe despite knowing the truth, your higher self knows the truth, and you're still living in a lower frequency, in a lower version of yourself, going to the racism and enjoying it and joining in with low vibe, low frequency things. Listen, the world is moving on from that, and you either elevate, if everything is about evolution, you can evolve or you can disappear with the filth. The choice is yours. So yeah, that will be it for today. I got a lot more that I'm going to just up and post because they don't want my blog out. That's fine. I'm going to keep putting things out. Where it goes, who knows, but it's coming. Definitely join the Patreon. who knows where these things will go. But the truth needs to be spoken and will be spoken no matter what. All right. That's all for today, guys. I'll see you in the next one.